It's one of the greatest rivalries in all of college football, the fresh from Florida Sunshine Showdown between Florida State and Florida. We're your Nole insiders, Lane Hurt and Tim Lenefelt, and we're going to get you ready for the big game. Before we get started, let's talk a little bit about Florida. The Gators are 9-2, 6-2 in the SEC East. They're also the SEC East champions. They'll be playing in that SEC championship game next week, 13th in the AP poll. First, the good news for Florida State, their offense is ranked 102nd in total offense, averaging 367 yards per game. The bad news, though, defensively very good. 5th in total defense, giving up less than 300 yards a game, and 3rd in team passing efficiency. Quarterbacks are rated 95 against the Gators this year. Tim, obviously a huge game regardless of the records, but both teams, especially Florida, has a lot on the line. Yeah, they really do. It kind of snuck up on you a little bit, just how much is on the line for both Florida State and Florida. You know, Florida, with a win over Florida State and a win over Alabama in the SEC championship game next week, would have a pretty strong argument to be in the college football playoff, whereas Florida State has an opportunity, and we've seen a few bowl projections. They have an outside shot at getting themselves in a New Year's Six bowl, which would be for, I believe, the 5th straight year they'd be in either a BCS game or a New Year's Six game, and I know that's a kind of a feather in the program's cap that they'd like to have, and a win over a top 15 team like Florida would kind of boost that resume, if you will. And in addition to the usual bragging rights, Florida State going for a 4th straight win over Florida, 6th in 7 years, and really just once again reassert its dominance both in this rivalry and in the state of Florida. And on top of that, the seniors can be the first class at Florida State to go 8-0 combined against Miami and Florida. Yeah, and you know, actually looked up, they're actually already the first group to beat Miami and Florida in 3 straight years. So they're already a remarkable accomplishment and can really sort of set themselves apart as one of the great senior classes, 4-year classes in school history. Of course, they were part of the national championship a few years ago, and beating Florida on Saturday would further cement that legacy. Let's get to our stat of the week. This week brought to you by the Nole Insiders. Hey, all right. Did a little digging, and I think this is a pretty unique stat. In Florida State's last 5 wins against Florida, the Gators have 8 drives that have lasted 50 or more yards. In those drives, they have a combined 7 points, 3 turnovers, 2 field goals, and 2 turnovers on downs. Just a tremendous, I don't know, has it been Florida State's defense, Florida's offense? I mean, no matter how you slice it, that's pretty remarkable. It really is, and look, I don't think anybody would argue, even Florida fans, that the Gators have struggled offensively over the past few years. They had a hard time moving the ball when Will Muschamp was the coach, and they've had a hard time getting into the next gear now under Coach Jim McElwain. So I think Florida's offense does play into that a little bit, but look, there's another team out there, another team that has to play defense, and you saw Florida State's defense last year, I thought, was just a tremendous effort. And people forget that final score of the game was 27-2, but it felt a lot closer than that for much of the game, and so for Florida State's defense to play as well as it did down there in Gainesville and eventually pull away, Dalvin Cook, of course, had the big 4th quarter, was a pretty impressive thing for them to do. And I wonder, you know, look, this is a group of not many people on Florida State's roster know what it feels like to lose to Florida or to even, you know, allow a lot of points to Florida. And so I wonder, you know, if there's a confidence in Florida State's locker room and maybe a lack thereof in Florida. It's kind of like we saw a few years back when Jimbo Fisher was taking over and Florida State hadn't beaten Florida in so many years. You kind of have to get over that hump before you know how to do it. And right now, the pendulum is firmly in Florida State's side of things. And that leads directly into our matchup of the week. You have to expect Florida's not going to score a lot against Florida State. So that leaves the big matchup being Florida State's offense versus Florida's defense, and we'll break it down further. The Seminoles' offensive line versus the Gators' defensive line. Who can control that matchup? Yeah, I think that's going to be really where the game is won or lost. FSU has to do a good job blocking the Gators up front. That defensive line is just fantastic. Their linebackers are fantastic. They have 2 guys that are really, really good. I know Jimbo Fisher expects Jared Davis, the one linebacker, to be one of the first linebackers off the board next year. So their front 7 altogether is fantastic. And against the Florida State offensive line that seems to have found its way over the last couple of weeks. But you know, this is going to be a huge step up in competition from the NC States or Boston Colleges or Syracuse's. We're going to find out exactly how much progress Florida State's offensive line has made over the past few weeks. And it's important twofold. One, you have to keep DeAndre Francois upright and healthy. We've had that conversation all year. And 2, you have to give Dalvin Cook some space to run. Now, he doesn't need a whole lot. He can fit himself into some pretty small areas and break some tackles. So he's better than just about everybody at that sort of thing. But you do have to give him something. And so if Florida State can do that, they should be in pretty good shape. There you have it, Seminole fans. It's the Noles versus the Gators. Prime time on ABC, just the way this rivalry should be. I mean, there's something right about this game being in prime time.
Yeah, there really is, and it's kind of funny because it's the first time that it's been a night game at home for Florida State since, I think, 2004. We've had a couple down there in Gainesville that have been after dark, but this first one in Tallahassee in a while, so looking forward to it.
Make sure you check out Tim's First and 10 on Seminoles.com. Always great information to prepare you for the game. And, of course, we'll have your 3 keys to victory on game day and everything you need post-game as the Noles take on the Gators. So for Tim, I'm Lane. Go Noles.